Pump the brakes. Another major federal sweep in the city of Boston yesterday. 19 members from two of Boston's most infamous street organizations have been indicted in round two of U.S. Attorney Levy's crusade to clean out any existing criminality in the city. A lot of people saw the writing on the wall and predicted this would happen and who it would happen to. Let's get into it, shall we? What's up, everybody? Welcome back. So, big news in Boston yesterday, and that's if I get this out by Friday, fingers crossed. Another large federal sweep against two of Boston's most infamous inner city street organizations, H Block and Mission Hill. So, this is by no means a surprise to me, or I'd say the majority of people who have somewhat of a clue. After the massive 40 plus person sweep against Heath Street in February of this year, most people believed it was just the beginning, and they were correct. When I made the video after Heath Street got knocked, mad people were in the comments saying Mission Hill is next, there's more to come, etc. It would only be natural that the feds would come after Heath Street's ops after they were busted. The feds weren't going to just take out one organization and let others operate with impunity. Well, especially not U.S. Attorney Levy, who is on a mission. This guy means business. He is determined to wipe out any activity like this from the city of Boston, period. He's also cleaning up these little corrupt police forces and courts in Massachusetts as well. This guy is a problem. I'm just not sure what people aren't understanding. The street life is dead, and especially in Boston, which has become an elitist city which only wants to cater to the wealthy people and college students. Leaders need to protect the image of the city of Boston. Again, I'm not in shock that there was another federal sweep in Boston. I'm not surprised at who it involved. H Block is one of the most feared crews in Boston and has had a vicious rivalry with Heath Street for well over a decade now. Also, Mission Hill is one of the most well-known and notorious hoods in Boston's history. They have also had a deadly rivalry with Heath Street that has been ramping up in recent years. Another thing that's very obvious is that feds are going after hoods that are detailing these feuds in drill raps. Fueled by their star rapper Trotty Y Jizzle, the younger members of Heath Street completely immerse themselves into the drill culture, constantly making disrespectful songs talking about dead ops in the worst ways possible, but also blatantly describing actual crimes in their songs. There's so many reasons why this is completely insane. Attorney Levy quoted Trotty Y Jizzle's own lyrics during the Heath Street Sweep news conference. I hope the feds aren't listening, he said, quote, well, they are. They know how influential people like Y Jizzle are to the younger generation, and they see drill music as a very dangerous entity. Also, by stating crimes you're involved in, you're basically doing the investigators' work for them. It just seems so obvious of who and what they're after, but I guess some people really just don't care about the consequences. So, I personally was relieved not to see Mission Hill's top rapper and one of my favorite Boston rappers, King Brick's name in the indictment. In Heath Street Sweep, Y Jizzle got caught up, who is also one of my favorite rappers, along with my dude Ricky Maserati. I was bummed to see guys with so much talent throwing it away on the streets, but I also believe that the feds specifically targeted Jizzle, Mozzie, and Trotty J, among others, to send a message that they weren't going to tolerate people rapping about violent crimes and getting away with it. The feds are clearly trying to snub out the drill culture in the city of Boston. King Bricks and Trotty Y Jizzle have one of the more heated and well-known drill beefs in the city. And one has to believe that the notoriety of the music with the actual street violence behind it is what has caused the feds to move in such a heavy-handed way. The image that this creates of a dangerous urban environment rife with tit-for-tat violence, described in incredibly graphic and disrespectful ways, is simply not going to be tolerated. They're coming at drill rappers the same way in New York City. No one wants a replay of what happened in Chicago over the past decade or so. The authorities see drill music as brainwashing much of the nation's youth, normalizing violence and the disrespect of the opposition's death. One rapper that wasn't so lucky though is 8-Zip from H Block. I gave 8-Zip an honorable mention in my top Boston rappers of 2024 video, and while I'm a fan of his music, I'm really not too surprised that 8-Zip would get caught up in a sweep. In most of the interviews I've seen him on, he is very clearly a street dude who's about that life. He claimed in one interview he wanted to declare martial law on all rats. The H Block indictment was mostly centered around dealing in violence. Authorities say that since 2021 they've seen a steady increase in trafficking in H Block's territory, mostly Fetty and Hard, but they've also been charged with trying to supply South Bay and National Street jails with spice, which apparently is an epidemic right now in these facilities. When I was in Middleton jail in 2017, that's the first time I saw the paper going around that had been dipped in liquid spice. When I was at the farm in 2013, we were still getting the actual greenish looking spice, but since then they've made a liquid form. Of course, it didn't take prison officials long to figure this out, and they began having all mail sent to a single location where it could be reprocessed on different paper and then delivered to the inmates. To get around this, allegedly H Block members, among others, began sending in diluted paper and sealed legal documents which by law can only be opened in the presence of the prisoner. But yet again, prison officials are getting hip to this as well. The inmates will keep trying to bring it in, and the officials will keep trying to keep it out. That's their jobs. Very clear to me anyways that Attorney Levy and the feds have a single purpose, and they are choosing their targets specifically. Heath Street, Mission Hill, and H Block are some of the most well-known and notorious hoods in the city of Boston. H Block, which began in the early 2000s, is one of the most violent and feared groups in the city. Centered around Humboldt Ave and many of the side streets, which also a lot begin with the letter H, H Block has been one of Boston's most dangerous areas for decades. In the 1980s, Humboldt was run by a crew called the Raiders, and they were notorious in their own right, mostly for the deadly conflict with nearby Castlegate Road that resulted in the terrible death of a little girl named Tiffany Moore, and that was a tipping point in Boston's worst period in history. Throughout the 1990s, the Raiders disappeared, and into the 21st century, H Block are now the property managers of the Humboldt Ave Trotter Park area in Roxbury. H Block has been known to go toe-to-toe with much larger hoods like Heath Street. Even though their numbers may have been smaller, their members per capita were equal to or much more violent than other groups in Boston, earning them their fearsome reputation. H Block also showed no fear towards the BPD, and have had multiple incidents with the force. Most notably, which I discussed about in a past video, an H Block member named Angelo West was killed by a police officer after almost ending another officer's life. This happened almost 10 years ago. The neighborhood itself has been one of Boston's most dangerous for the past 3 or 4 decades. Mission Hill, aka Money Hill, has been one of Boston's most notorious hoods since the 1980s. Mission Hill, who's always repped the blue and yellow and Michigan Wolverines gear, sporting the big M on the hat. Also, sometimes you can see them wearing Milwaukee Brewers gear as well. But Mission Hill gained notoriety in 1989 when Charles Stewart claimed to have been attacked by a black man, which resulted in the death of his pregnant wife. The BPD in turn came through Mission Hill like a hurricane, kicking in doors, roughing up the youth, accosting every black male they came across. Only then, shortly after, the awful truth come out that Charles Stewart was responsible and he later jumped off the Tobin Bridge. It was a terrible black eye on the BPD, and the Mission Hill neighborhood never forgot about it. Mission Hill's close proximity to the Northeastern University campus made it a hub in the late 1980s for a certain product. In my opinion, it's also the reason that Mission Hill is one of the most gentrified neighborhoods in Roxbury and was one of the first to do so. You can't have dangerous projects right around the corner from a top-notch university. That would drive away a lot of revenue. There's an old side and a new side of Mission where they're taking down a lot of the old projects. The feds allege in the indictment that the majority of the illegal activity is transpiring on Mission Main and the Annunciation Road developments. The majority of the charges against Mission Hill members were in the indictment were financial fraud and scams based on elaborate check cashing schemes. It seems like since COVID, a lot of these street crews have gotten more involved in financial quote-unquote white-collar crimes, if you will, than the standard sitting on the block inner-city crime that authorities are used to. There's still plenty of that on Mission Hill, which is still rife with narcotics. In all, 19 people were indicted as part of the federal sweep, 10 members of H Block and 9 from Mission Hill. H Block is a dangerous group, and statistics show that illegal activity has been on a steady rise in that area in recent years, but I feel like the indictment against Mission Hill is somewhat symbolic. Like it's some sort of punishment for its notoriety in the recent drill rap and street beef with Heath Street. Attorney Levy is putting everyone on notice. If I was doing anything illegal in Massachusetts, I'd stop now if I were you. The feds are dug in like ticks and they aren't going anywhere anytime soon. I also wouldn't be surprised if a couple more notorious hoods don't end up in sweeps before the end of the year. Boston is a different city now. It's always had wealth, but now it's become exclusively for the wealthy. Ongoing street feuds and drill beefs interfere with that type of progression. A kid got killed in the Seaport District earlier this summer, and Boston certainly can't have violence, not in their precious new yuppie paradise that they've built. Enjoyed this quick video on breaking news in the city of Boston. I like to mix in current headlines and updates to go along with stories of times past. Also, I just can't and won't stop bringing attention to what the city of Boston and Massachusetts as a whole has become and what it was. The rapid transformation from a gritty blue-collar city to the land of milk and honey, while most residents who aren't wealthy suffer and are eventually pushed away from their homes. Attorney Levy and the feds are trying to snub out these groups completely. Their goal is to eventually eliminate and gentrify every last hood in the city. Change is eventual, and everything changes, that's life. But it's just the manner that they go about it in that gets me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this quick video. When I saw the headline come across, I had to scrape the script that I was working on and start this because this is just a continuation of the huge sweep that they did with Heath Street back in February. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, smash that like button. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I hope you guys have been enjoying the content. I feel like the channel is starting to go back in some good motion. Most of all, though, guys, make good choices, make good decisions, take good care of yourselves, your family, your friends. Try to have a nice day. I'll talk to you guys soon. God bless.